Hey, deserved listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. Let's watch.
I'm telling you this because I have to be mentally prepared because she can post it right now. And those pictures are going to be on the internet for the rest of my life.
I don't think you need to worry about that.
Oh my gosh. What really...
Okay, to catch you up, she is saying that she got an anonymous message that her nude photographs that he gave to this other person in a very hurtful / potentially criminal way are going to be published, and that she's worried about that. She's upset. And what Gino's response is, I don't think you need to worry about that. Okay, so we use this as a jumping off point. We all are guilty of what Gino does. Every one of you out there has done something like this. I guarantee you. It is the norm. It is, to some extent, the only way in which people respond to events like this. Your partner comes to you and says, I am worried that our children, because they're going to the wrong school, you know, say you're in a neighborhood and you just bought a house and you're fully committed to that mortgage and and your partner comes to you and says, I'm worried about our kids because I just heard this thing on the internet that said that the schools in this area are pretty bad. And so I'm worried, you know, what's going to happen to our kids. I guarantee you a good number of you will respond to that by saying, I don't think you need to worry about that. Or, well, where'd you read that? Or, you know, essentially it's this impulse to fix. So if we break down what's happening, which I think is important, for Jasmine, she has this event which causes a fear or pain response in her, probably both, of I just got a message saying that my nude photograph is going to be published on the internet for everyone to see. And once it's out there, you know, it's hard to, which I find to be extremely problematic, you know, like the Jennifer Lawrence thing and others, or even Pamela Anderson and Kim Kardashian, these kinds of things. It's like, it seems like it should hold a really high level of criminal consequence for doing something like that, right? Anyway, so she gets this message. She's afraid. She's hurt by not only this other person, but it kind of reminds her of what Gino did. She expresses that. Now, she could do a better job of expressing it. I think her expression is fine, but if she really wanted to be top-notch differentiation and ownership of feelings and maturity, it's to say to Gino, I got this message, and I just want to let you know that I'm a little afraid of it happening. I don't know what'll happen, but I'm a little afraid that that's what's going to happen. And I'm reminded of what you did, and I'm hurt by what you did. I know you've apologized already, but I need you to apologize again. I need you to understand what you did, what was a horrible thing. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not breaking up with you. I'm just inviting you to remind me that you're remorseful and that you're not going to do this again, that you understand why it hurts me so much. And I just want to vent and talk about how, like, neither one of us knows what's going to happen in the future. So she could have said something like that. That'd be a pretty, unreasonable expectation that someone would be able to do that. But anyway, she pretty clearly lays it out. It's like, here's what happened. I'm worried this is going to happen. And he says, I don't think you need to worry about that. A better response. So if we break it down, she has that feeling. She expresses it. He now, his stimulus is her telling him this. And then he immediately is afraid and potentially in a little bit of pain, like the pain of shame of like, oh yeah, I did that. And worry of not only this happening, but I don't know if he really worries about this picture being out there. I think he more worries that Jasmine's going to leave him, right? Or she's going to be upset if this picture does get out or whatever. And so he feels that emotion, which is very normal and very expected. And then there's an immediate internal reaction to that. It's not external, particularly with Gino, because he's so blank so often. But I mean, he's not extremely blank. He's just a little bit blank. But point is that there's an immediate reaction of like, oh crap, she's going to leave me. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Okay, it's all internal. And then there's a response of, or an evaluation of, well, if she's no longer worried, and she can just forget this and not concern herself with it, then she won't have the pain and she won't have the fear. And then I won't have the pain or the fear because I won't have to think about what I did, and she won't leave me. So shortcut is I'm just going to tell her, don't worry about it, because that will solve the problem. But of course, we understand that doesn't solve the problem because it doesn't take away the reality. Just telling someone don't worry about it, I think you're blowing this out of proportion, doesn't take away that at least some of the proportion is appropriate and rational. And in this situation, I'd say all of it is rational. And so we all do this. Our partner tells us, so with the example of, I'm worried about our kids in school. So you immediately hear that. You're like, oh crap. One, we're locked in on a mortgage, so I can't really fix that problem. Two, I can't afford private schools, so I don't know what to do there. Three, I don't want our kids to be harmed in that way by going to a crappy school. That's pretty awful. Four, is my partner now going to start thinking about getting another house, and like that'll destroy us financially, and will that cause a lot of conflict between the two of us because I'm going to have to contend with this thing of like we need to stay, and then they always want to leave. And then that's going to cause all these problems because we know that conflict between us can get out of control. And so you have all this feeling in an instant, like in half of a second. All this happens just like boom. And then you have this response of, well, problem solved if I can get my partner to just stop thinking about that. If they just don't think about it, then it'll all go away. And it's this total fantasy that one has the ability to control that in someone else. So, and, there are instances where it is rational, like you're at the table and your partner goes to the fridge and is just like, we don't have any ketchup. I can't eat my French fries without ketchup. And you see the ketchup is right next to you behind a vase or something. A vase sounds so fancy. But anyway, point is that you can solve the problem right away. You see the problem and you're like, I have a solution. The ketchup is right here. There are times when you actually can solve your partner's problems by saying, I have fixed it. Or maybe a more direct analogy would be you have two bottles of ketchup. One is labeled poisonous and the other one is not. And your partner has had some of the ketchup and suddenly you realize, oh my God, this is the poison one. And you're like, no, the poison one is right here. You don't have to worry about that. Anyway, point is that sometimes you can't. It's rare, though, that you can actually solve a problem in your partner in terms of their emotions by just saying a sentence, by correcting their brain, So Gino is doing that. And now it doubles the hurt. Because for Jasmine, she's like, not only am I reminded of what you did, not only am I terrified of this picture being out there because of what you did, I am now hurt that you're just not taking it seriously. That you're saying essentially there's something wrong with me for having an emotion about this, which I believe is completely rational. Of course, the internet calls this gaslighting. It's not gaslighting.
Did you? You, instead of having the balls to say, Jasmine, I'm sorry.
So Jasmine gets triggered, she gets hurt, and now she's hostile, which isn't great, but understandable under the circumstances. I don't think it's going to go well because Gino, I don't think he has a limited ability to respond to these situations under the best circumstances, but under hostility, his defense, I think internally is, here she goes again, crazy woman, that kind of thing. Let's see what happens.
Yes, you're right. She can do it.
No, I said I'm sorry. So.
No, that's not enough.
Not terrible. He's not becoming extremely defensive. He's saying, no, I said I'm sorry. So it's kind of reminding, I think, of like, I said I'm sorry, and by implication, I still am sorry. Like, that would have been helpful. It was like, hey, I'm sorry for what I did. It's so awful. So maybe he's able to pull it back. Let's watch.
It's not enough. You're talking about my life, Gino.
I feel really bad. I feel terrible. But if these messages are coming from who I think it is, I think it's just a bunch of empty threats.
Often in the one-on-one interviews, they're more differentiated. And so he's like, I feel bad, I feel terrible. Okay, tell her that. I think that's half of what's happening right here. She wants to be reminded that you feel, you know, one of the best responses he could say in this moment would be like, oh my God, really? Well, one, if it is who I think it is, I don't think you have anything to worry about, because I think it is my ex who says stuff like that. But having said that, I totally understand why you're freaking out about this. I'm freaking out about it right now. 3, I'm so sorry for what I did. You know, I could see how this would just be, you know, salt on the wound of of the wound you're trying to heal from what I did. I just can't believe I did that. It was so stupid. That would be a response. Let's see what he says.
Because I know my ex pretty well. My ex does want to create trouble, yes. But where's the motivation to do that? I don't think that's going to happen.
Fine, but how do you know? I mean, have you been down this road before with this woman? I don't think so. So it's wishful thinking for sure. And of course you would in this scenario, but you have to recognize you're in a bit of a motivated reasoning of just like, I don't think it's going to happen, because then you don't have to worry about it, because there's nothing you can do about it.
You have to understand, Gino, there are people that depend on me. I have my kids, I have my mother, and being a teacher, I'm gonna be destroyed. I'm gonna get fired, that's for sure.
Now that would be wrong. I don't doubt what Jasmine is saying. I mean, I could see that happening in a number of societies, but my God, I mean, you take a private picture and someone else leaks it, and then someone else leaks it to the internet, and then you get fired because of it. Like, that's so wrong. It's like, I gave this picture to my partner in confidence, and you know, 2 other people broke that confidence, and thus I lose my job. That's not okay.
You understand what I'm trying to tell you?
Right, yeah, I understand.
So why you're telling me like not to be scared? So?
Right, okay. So he's not being destructive, but he's being his typical quiet, withdrawn self, non-responsive, or limited responses, but his limited responses are in the constructive realm. And good for Jasmine for being very clear instead of spinning out of control like other cast members might do. She's just like, this is a real thing. I could lose my job. Okay, maybe the risk is low, like say 5% chance this happening, but I could lose my job. My entire reputation could be over. All of my family will be harmed by this. And so even if it is a small risk, it's such a big consequence. And you're telling me I shouldn't worry about that? Like, come on. So she's being pretty clear, and she's not being, I don't think, inappropriately hostile. So let's see what Gino says here.
If you lose your job, I would support you.
Okay, so this isn't horrible. It's not helpful because he's only seeing it from a very narrow perspective of, well, you know, if you lose your job and you don't have any income, I'll support you. Ignoring all the other things that he can't really solve, which is the reputation, the fact that she might not want to not work, the fact that she actually seems like a very career-oriented person. So this idea, and then she's like, are you going to give me $3,000? Anyway, point is that he's just looking at the practical and just a narrow side of that, instead of acknowledging like, oh yeah, I could see how that would be awful, and I'm sorry again, and I don't have any way of fixing that. Now that cat's out of the bag and I sent that photo, I don't know what to do. I mean, do you want me to reach out to my ex and say, was that you? Could you, what do you want me to do? I don't know what to do. I'm so scared. I'm so sorry, you know, just something like that.
So you're gonna give me $3,000 a month. That's my salary.
So
Forget about it.
No. I'm just going to tell you. Are you going to give me a chance to respond?
No,
to that?
I'm giving you a chance.
Can you do another kind of job, and I can support you until you start working here?
Okay, so I thought, so she gets up to leave, and he's like, wait, give me a chance to respond. I'm like, okay, good. You're not letting her run off, and you're gonna see the situation for what it is. And then he says, do you think you could do another job? Like, address the, now, again, it's normal that people will do this, but you would think by now, at this point in the conversation, he would have some awareness of like, this isn't just about career. Well, one, it's not just about money, it's, anyway. Ugh.
Do something working out. You like to work out. Who knows, maybe you'll make more money in your new job.
So I just have to assume that he's extremely anxious in this moment and is panicking. And given his personality, it's very hard for him to see the woods for the trees, meaning that he can't see that this is more of her just general fear of the future if the picture is released, and her anger that he sent a picture like this to someone. And he's just focusing like, well, let's talk about career options. It's like you're not seeing what's really happening here. Now, I want to address something. People have been emailing me and saying that maybe he's on the autistic spectrum. There's frequent questions along these lines with some cast members. And what I'll say is that there's no evidence for or against that he is on the spectrum. There are certain signs that we can point to maybe in him and other cast members. Whenever someone on this show or a variety of other reality TV shows is, at least from the public's evaluation, socially stunted or socially inept in some way, someone that seems to be quirky, someone that is nerdy, this idea comes up as a question mark or even as just a diagnosis from the public. Oh, definitely autistic, this kind of thing. And so what I want to say to that is that just because someone is quirky, just because someone is socially inept, does not mean that they have autism. And I hope that people understand that it might be that, but it'd be like looking at someone crying, like Memphis is crying. Oh, she's depressed. It's like, well, maybe, but people cry for a variety of reasons. People are nerdy for a variety of reasons. Now, could you question in your mind, be like, I wonder, okay, it's not horrible, but understand that it's a simplification. Autism is a very particular thing, and it's not just being quirky. Does he not? I don't know. We probably will never know. It's an interesting question, but there's not enough data.
To tell me that, you have a problem. It is an insult to me, Gino saying that I could just get some other job.
Yeah, and let's add misogyny and sexism to the mix here of him as a man. Just be like, oh, well, your little career, and I don't know if that's where he's operating from. It certainly could be influenced by that. But this notion of just like, oh, you women and your little careers, you can just switch. It's not a big deal. It doesn't matter. It's just like this little thing you do for money, and it's extra. At this point, if she still has her job, she's the sole breadwinner in this relationship. Now, I'm getting the impression that his work is seasonal. He doesn't have work right now, but that it's sure. He seems quite sure that he will earn money in the future. Anyway, so point is that it is a misogynistic, sexist, at least. It smells of sexism. Let's just put it that way.
I love being a teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher ever since I was a little girl. That's part of my identity. That's part of what I am. And because of Gino, this can all be gone. And I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. Now, the other thing that, have they talked about where they're going to live? I think they're going to come back to the States, right? So I would like to think that in the States, you can't fire someone under those circumstances. I mean, you could certainly it could bias someone in the interview process, right? But I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you know about the legality of that. I know some lawyers are actually watching.
If that ever happens.
All I really want is to see that he is really sorry about what he did.
Yes, exactly. From the beginning of this conversation, a good percentage is, if not all of it, has been that. Do you feel sorry for what you did? I'm now being reminded, and I'm having a jolt, a lightning bolt of anger and hurt about what you did. Are you sorry for what you did? And this is something that we can use as a jumping off point. When you do something of past a certain threshold to someone else, let's talk about a partner, like you cheat or something along these lines, the apologies might not ever end. And I tell this to people with the notion that maybe it will end, but I tell the Ginos of the world, if you stay with Jasmine for the rest of your life, you might be apologizing for this for the rest of your life, and get used to it. And discard the notion that, well, I've already apologized for this, so let's move on. No, the pain keeps coming back. We are not creatures, we are not animals that let it go, as the Frozen song is like. In fact, that song, although you could argue it's like, did she really let it go? She's trying to let it go, but she can't let it go, which would be in line with how things are. We want to let things go. We want to not dwell on the past, but we always do dwell on the past. It just is the way our brains work. That's the way memory works. And so when something like this happens, 25 years from now, she could just have this wave. Something could remind her and she'll be like, oh, and the path to health is for her to alert him and say, I'm reminded of what you did. Can you please apologize again? And for him to say, yes, I'm so sorry. Instead of saying, I've already apologized for this. You're dwelling on the past. Let it go. It's just like this lack of understanding of, and it's convenient for the Ginos of the world to say that. It's just like, this is your problem. It's not my problem, right? It's the same if someone dies, if you have a loss or a divorce, that you don't ever let go of that. If it's past, sometimes you do, right? But there are breakups or deaths or losses that are above a certain threshold that you don't have enough years left on the planet to let it go. So, and right now they're extremely early in that process. So obviously Jasmine would have that emerging pain and he needs to apologize. Now, she's not being explicit with that request. She could help him out by doing so. And I think he might rise to the occasion, but he should see through what's happening and understand that and just directly say, I just want to say, we're talking about your career and stuff. I just want to say, I feel so terrible for what I did. Now we're looking at a prospect for, because of what I did, I could ruin your career. I am so sorry for that. I don't know. I feel powerless. I don't know what to do. Let's see what he says.
That's all I want.
I'm done here. Depressing me.
Now, on the scale of things, I'm going to say that Gino was in the direction of constructive. He was not being particularly destructive. And given what we've seen in the past from them, I'm guessing once they revisit this later, it'll probably go better. So, if this is the first phase of a 3-phase process that eventually returns to equilibrium, then, on the scale of things, it's not that awful. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.